well. It made some progress, but it never really got, taken all the way. And then there was the question, perhaps P4 DPDK backend is more suitable for a couple of reasons, one of which it supports the PNA architecture and has provisions for statefulness, more provisions. And it's also will be more performant than BMv2 can be. So since Andy joined us, I can let him kind of pick up the thread on where we are with P4 DPDK. But the BMv2 enhancement for statefulness is kind of just on hold, frozen. It probably won't continue. And P4 DPDK is a more likely avenue towards having a very performant and full-featured Dash model. And Andy and I have been kind of collaborating in the background, trying to bring that along. And Andy can probably give an update on that if he'd like to.
Sure. Yeah, thanks. So I don't have it running, Dash running on DPDK yet with the test suite, but Chris has helped me understand, how to do that. And I think I'm probably, a day or 3 away from being able to try it out. Now, I fully expect the first time trying out, some of the tests are probably going to fail for who knows what reasons to be discovered. But, that's just
normal.
That's just my guess from not knowing, not a certainty. But I expect within a day or 3 we'll at least know what maybe some additional gaps that are reasons why DPDK needs improvement, perhaps, or we'll find out maybe they actually work.
Yeah, and also just to catch people up on progress to date, we have in the Dash repo as part of CI/CD, we compile for the P4 DPDK backend. Whenever we do CI runs on the whole repo, we build it for P4 DPDK as well as building it for the BMv2 to make sure that we catch even just compilation and compatibility issues there. And that revealed a few things that we had to work around, which Andy has been fielding, and Andy's been working with the Intel team response that maintains the P4 DPDK to try to close those gaps. What we'd like to do as the next major milestone is spin up an instance of a P4 DPDK soft switch and use it as a Dash behavioral model to actually run tests against. So we're striving towards that goal, which would be a big milestone to achieve.
Okay. So any questions from anyone on the call about like the goal or what we're trying to do or the challenges we've run into?
The one thing I wanted to ask Andy is that the statefulness related to statefulness, right? For example, in the Dash, if you learn a flow, right, when the first packet of a connection arrives, you learn the flow in both directions. So in some way, you're learning 2 different flows, right? And even though the PNA supports add-on miss, but I'm not sure it natively supports learning things like both directions of the flow from one packet. Do you think you'll need enhancements for that?
So that's something where I'm less familiar with the Dash capabilities desired or needed there. Certainly, if you can figure out a way to write P4 code that uses 2 add-on miss operations to add the 2 table entries required, DPDK should be able to support that, I would guess. But if there's not an easy way to do that, then there may be a gap there that I don't know what would be needed.
Yeah, I think we probably have to enhance that add-on miss syntax we have today. I mean, the way it's written probably won't add 2, but
yeah, it definitely won't add 2. I mean, the way it's defined today, it's isolated to a single table search and add miss. You could do a search and add on miss, and if it's successfully added, you could recirculate the packet and do a search and add on miss on a different table with appropriate P4 logic. But I don't know if that's a good solution for Dash or not.
Yeah, so we'll have to probably hack around something to try to get it to mimic the behavior which we want. And natively, it won't support that behavior, is my guess.
Natively, my understanding is, the add-on miss in PNA and as implemented in DPDK supports add-on miss focused on one table at a time.
Okay.
Yeah, so what I was showing here was our former project tracker where we were basically writing down all the things that were missing in the behavioral model. And so, but I think, at the top end, wasn't it the, we need the compiler, the simulator, the translation layer, and then the support for the different pieces that are missing. Would you agree with that, Chris, before we moved on to like IPv6 support and things like that?
I'm sorry, I got distracted by
It's okay.
incoming. I apologize deeply.
Yeah.
Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, so what I said was this was our project tracker in GitHub for behavioral model. And I
Yeah.
feel like out of all of these items, let's say 49 of them, I
Mhm.
think like if we picked the top 4 or 5, it would have to do with, the compiler, the simulator, the translation layer, the missing pieces like add-on miss, et cetera. Would you agree with that?
Probably because we almost want to get a new platform established that lets us
Mhm.
take this further. That probably makes sense.
Mhm.
So, Chris, can I ask, right? Because I'm trying to understand this better. As far as I know, if I look at, I see the long list here, and some of them, like IPv6 support, right? It is today,
Mhm.
should be in today's behavioral model, BMv2. So, out of this, right, other than add-on mess, I'm trying to figure out what is not supported in BMv2 today.
Some of these items may be not that the behavioral model is deficient and that the implementation in the dash code is incomplete. And we probably need to go through this list carefully and find out, Christina, if some of these are stale and we've already done
Yeah.
it but didn't track it. This list
Yeah.
might be a little bit out of date with.
Oh, it is, and it is
Yeah.
because this is where we started and we kind of dropped, not dropped it, put it to the side because we couldn't get the tests to run without hitting a behavioral model miss, right? Like the tests that were written for VNet to VNet or these test cases here that were provided by, what was it, PL Vision and other contributors. We just couldn't get them to run properly because pieces were missing in BMv2.
Well, there's a large piece that's missing, and that is just full underlay implementation. And without that, we'll never be able to run a lot of the tests that Intel PL Vision, as a subcontractor, it created a whole lot of tests, which, we've been told run on an actual platform.
This here, the
And
basic underlay routing, BMv2.
But so, yeah, I had a question on that one also. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So, if you look at Dash, right, architecture as such, right? I mean, by default, the underlay routing can be easily done in the switch ASIC. And I think that's what the spec also says that, minimum requirement is to implement a hairpin in the Dash or DPU, and let's switch to the underlay routing. So I would say that even though I am from Intel and the tests were written by Intel, I'm of the opinion that the tests were written wrong. And they should not be expected to do underlay routing because that is not really a DPU functionality per se. It's more of a switch functionality or NPU functionality, if I follow the correct terminology, right? So it's not a limitation of BMv2. It's more of a limitation of the test.
Well, maybe the test was written with the wrong assumptions.
Yes.
It might be another way of phrasing it.
Yeah.
And you might be right. And maybe, quite a bit of time has passed since that effort was kicked off and done. And it's perhaps someone needs to go through all those functional tests that were written at that time. And there's a lot of conditionals in the PTF test cases, testing for what platform it's on. So it skips tests that can't run on BMv2. Maybe someone needs to go through there and say, well, these tests just don't make sense anymore in the context of our understanding of Dash today. I don't know who can make that choice, but it seems like Intel sponsored the creation of all those tests. Maybe someone at Intel wants to go through and decide if that makes sense to have those in there. There's no harm in them being there because they're skipped for behavioral
and that's
model.
fair. What I'm trying to understand is because, from the community, right, we know that a lot of vendors have actually passed, the BBPTF test, hero test and so on. And I'm wondering if they actually run this PTF test. on their device, and you see results from those PTO tests. Because if they're wrong, then the test will fail on their device. They'll come and fix it or something like that, right? Again, it's my
I know of
it's
one
my
vendor.
ignorance.
I know of one vendor who
Uh-huh.
has actually run the PTF tests on their implementation.
Uh-huh.
Quite some time ago, I worked on there's a README on importing the Dash repo into your own private repo
Mhm.
and take advantage of all the Dash infrastructure. So there's a README third party or something under Dash pipeline.
I think
If you
I've
go
seen
under,
it somewhere, yeah.
yeah, Christine, if you go under Dash pipeline,
There's like multiple stages of how you run it, yeah.
README Dash's submodule. You were on there a moment ago.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah,
That's okay.
yeah.
Okay. And I know one vendor who actually expressed interest in this, so I developed this, and they used it to run PTF tests on their platform. Now, I don't know if they run all of them or skip the ones and only run the ones that were compatible with BMv2. But
So, yeah, okay. So,
but they did run a non-trivial amount of tests on their platform.
but we don't know how many of them pass or something, right? I'm just trying to see if those tests are actually actively being used by the community or not. And if they are actively being used, then they're probably hopefully correct by this time, right? Because people have found the issues. If they're
Yeah,
not being actively used by the community, then we may have to look at it differently than see that this is a BMv2 limitation or something, right? You know
well,
what I'm trying to say? It's
sort of, but I'd say the test still test, let's say, the exercises all the SCI APIs and verifies that functionally it makes sense and the pipeline seems to process the packets correctly. So it's still, it's still an important reference. If we didn't have any tests, we just have a bunch of a model sitting out there in outer space with no tie to reality or validation, right? So it's still something. Do
No,
you have a
I'm not.
proposal?
I completely agree with you. I'm just trying to tie it down to the BMv2 limitations, right? And I'm just trying to
I
figure
see.
out that I know that I have seen a lot of if devs in the test. Actually, I try to see if we can fix it or something, but there's quite a bit of code. It's not a
Well,
trivial amount of work, and there's
well,
tons of
maybe
if devs in the code.
well,
Uh,
I mean, do you wish to say whether or not you're running those tests on your platform? Because I know,
we do
at
run
least,
them.
yeah,
We do run them, but again, I'm questioning some of the things, right? Like, for example, if I run the test and pass it because I have an underlay routing, but that is not really we may have over-designed something which is not needed in some
I
sense,
see, I see.
right?
So,
And forget about that. My point is still
yeah,
valid, right? That if I look at Andy's, I'm coming from Andy's analysis of BMv2 versus the DPDK limitation, right? And the one thing I see is the add-onness, right?
hmm
And I don't see any other functional limitation that I'm aware of in BMv2 itself. I'm not talking about the Dash implementation. I'm talking about just the BMv2. So other than add and miss and stateful functionality, I'm not aware of anything which we're missing in BMv2, and I'm just trying to understand, are there
I
other
think
things which are in BMv2, gaps in BMv2, not in Dash as such, other than that add-on miss?
as
And
far
Andy
as I
probably will
know,
know if we, yeah.
I'm not aware of anything missing other than that.
Okay, so the only thing which is missing is, okay, as far as we know, okay.
yeah. And if someone wanted to enhance BMv2 with add-on miss capability and create a more PNA like BMv2, that would be great. And that was the original intention, but I think resources just got,
Constrained.
yeah,
But
competition for projects.
I agree, but what I'm trying to understand is right. We on one hand we have all these existing tests running and passing on BMv2, right? And on the PDK, even if we move, we haven't run anything yet, so we just don't know what are the other gotchas, right? So would it be faster to fix BMv2 rather than
Well,
trying to fix DPDK? Because there's one
uh,
feature we are talking about,
yeah,
and there could be a bunch of other things which are missing in P4 DPDK, and IPv6 is one example, but I don't know. There could be others.
well, I'll give you my opinion, but it's just that
Yeah,
um,
we don't know. Yeah.
P4 DPDK is it's being used right in certain commercial applications or and open source applications. It has the promise of being more performant than BMv2, and it probably will get more. And it's also intended for P&A, so it seems like if we run Dash against it and we find gaps, it's probably because P4 DPDK has some fundamental problems with it that need to be rectified. Like Andy found some things like that and eventually got to work, communicated those to the team that closed those gaps. And so to me, Dash is like another way of hardening P4 DPDK. And eventually it should come up to, it should be capable of running Dash perfectly, even if the P4 code has to do some strange things to accomplish, like multiple add-on miss, for example. But if it does everything correctly, then P4 DPDK has just benefited from that. Right? It's a test case and found problems with P4 DPDK that do need to be rectified, versus coming up with a new P&A architecture for BMv2, which if someone wants to take that on, that would be awesome. I just don't know who's going to commit to that.
I agree with most of you, but again, I'm just, and I understand that your point, but I have a couple of things, right? One is that, I mean, I know the P&A architecture is a thing, but if you look at the Dash, right, the only thing which we're missing is not the P&A architecture. All we are missing is add-on mess, right? And the other thing is that it's possible that P4 DPDK is being used by a bunch of people, but knowing how long the BMv2 has been around, I would say that BMv2 is probably being used by at least 10x or maybe way more than 10x number of people in the community.
Sure, 100x
right?
Probably.
Yeah, probably 100x, right?
1000x. Yeah, it's used in every training situation, probably.
So I'm trying to decouple this from P&A discussion, because I agree with you. If you want to support full P&A, you want to do P4 DPDK, right? There's no debate about it. But only thing I see missing for this project is add-on miss, as far as I know. And it's not the full P&A capability which we need.
So there's sort of a technical aspect that we just talked about, and we each have a point of view. I think they're both valid. The other is the practical one. Who's going to volunteer to do the work? That's really the real issue.
And I'm saying that neither, and to be honest with you, right, we haven't seen much progress being made on either front, BMv2 or
I think Marian fixes little bugs here and there. Camille Kudnik has found things, and Zigon, I think, has found it. And then that one guy from You and We was Mayapan. Mayapan ended up fixing something for us. But go ahead, Chris. Sorry.
Well, Christina, what we're really talking about is working on a fork of BMv2 and the P4C compiler. That work stopped a long time ago. NVIDIA had been working on it, but they just simply didn't have the resources to keep going. And once they saw interest in P4 DPDK, they kind of paused. And so if someone wants to work on BMv2 and add statefulness, I would love that. We would all love that.
Yes.
There's no objection to it. It's just, if there's no one saying I'm going to work on this, then it's just hypothetical.
Yeah.
Yeah, Chris, I think for the add-on miss feature, the thing for the P&A is that is actually, I think we discussed this once. Is that because the flow table is in the beginning, however the policy comes in the end. So the P&A, like the add-on miss, if we use the P&A one, it will be like recirculation back to the the backend those things. So we are actually exploring the other way to do that. Is that so basically the packet travels through the BMv2 or the P&A. It doesn't really matter, I guess. However, it lands on the NIC, and then from the NIC, it could be like VS pairs or whatever. And then from the NIC, we read the packet to really a data plan app. And we're currently exploring like using the flow API to actually insert the flow back to the flow table or the contract table, and then one will actually do the add-on miss. And also we can do any other fancy things with this thing. For example, flow resimulation. If there is like required flow resimulation coming up, it will be really hard to do that in P4 because then we'll need like flow table work, all these things. But those things can be very, comparatively easier to implement with the data
Right.
plan app. Yeah, and we actually, and for the resource allocation, yes, I think that is a very good point. For the resource allocation,
And the
I think,
fast path also.
yeah, and the fast pass, yes,
Yeah.
for the flow redirection, like flow rewrite.
Yeah.
So all these things, I think it all end up with like resource allocation. And I guess no matter if going to be like improve the BMv2 or change the DPDK, like improve the DPDK, they also will need some like a lot of resources, like improve, like change the BMv2, fork the BMv2 and change it. That sounds like a lot of work. Like it's more work than creating a data plan app, to be honest. So
yeah,
that's why we actually have one people that like working on that. So we allocate one resource working on the data plan app, doing the add-on miss. So that solves the resource allocation problem. And also, I think Camille will also help on some of the the side dash side forwarding things. So then we'll also like showing up in all this like the effort. So I can share some of the code bases that we actually forked. Not forked from BMv2, but forked from Dash. So I think that may help move this or improve this gap. So sorry, give me 1 second. I'm just trying to get the branch.
Yeah, Riff, thanks for reminding me of that external application. That was another way of achieving this.
Yeah,
yeah, and then you
hopefully
don't have
that
to do
will
the whole heavy
helpful.
lifting of the. See, the thing is that, like Riff said, right, the people, even if you
Yeah.
add on mess, or even if you have PNA model implemented, it still doesn't solve most of the things which we need. And one of them are like just 2 flows and a bunch of other stuff, right? And trying to either add on miss in BMv2 or moving wholesome to P4 DPDK, both of them are significant uplift or work compared to this data plane application. And that solves all the problems. The data plane application will solve all the problems, and neither BMv2 or P4 DPDK will end up solving all the use cases we have in Dash. Especially the fast path kind of things and flow resimulation. I mean, it will take lots and lots of effort for PNA or any P4 DPDK to get to the point where these things can be easily implemented. You can always work around, do lots of hack, but the behavioral model should look as clean as possible, right? I mean, in the actual implementation, people do a lot of hack, but if we start doing a bunch of hacks just to get BMv2 or P4 DPDK working in the behavioral model, then it just creates more confusion than actually solves
Well,
the
let
problems.
me ask this: assuming this external app is the way to go, work's going to proceed, right? It's obviously underway, and it works in conjunction with unmodified BMv2. That would be great. If we also had a correctly working P4 DPDK and didn't even necessarily use the add-on miss capability in the Dash model, it could also work with this external app, right?
You can
So,
switch between both here.
right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
So then we'd have kind of, I won't call it the best of both worlds, but we'd have the original classic BMv2, and then we'd have P4 DPDK, which might have some benefits, right?
Yeah, it'd
And
be
we don't
faster.
lose anything by having both.
It will be faster. I mean, I think the P4 DPDK in the end
Yeah.
is expected to be faster. So if somebody is
Yeah.
using this in a production environment, right, where they're using this behavioral model for their integration testing or something, then definitely the P4 DPDK will be faster. But I'm saying that we can move away from this thing where we are right now kind of stuck between BMv2 and P4 DPDK discussion and trying to figure out which one is better. And there's orthogonal approach, which is what Riff is proposing, and that will basically get us out of this quagmire we are in and make more progress on the real
Yeah, I
world,
think
right?
this will bring the like close the gap, so we can actually having the good side from the both world. And also, I believe if the data plan app is writing in a good way, then it can actually shows up as a demo whenever people would like to have their own, because they're bring your own data plan app. If the people try to create their own, well, here is exactly the one that shows up as how to do it. So Yeah, in somewhat. In somewhat.
Like the use case, like for example, Alibaba's use case, the NAT use case, right, basically requires you to find one of the unused ports because it's NAT, right? So when first you get a SYN packet, you find one of the unused ports and then attach that with the flow, right? And doing that in any behavioral model with BMv2 or DPDK is hard, right? Because none of them have this capability. P4 doesn't have any construct to say, okay, pick one from a free list or something of unused ports, right? There's no notion of a free list there. So if you want to model, let's say, that kind of application, you will need a software data plane application. Neither BMv2 or P4 DPDK will do it.
Yeah. So I just shared the 2 links in the chat. One is the first one is how the application right now is getting integrated in the Dash. The second one is the data plan app we're trying to create. But of course, they're in a very early stage. If you check the data plan app, is still like running in some marker code with max swap or whatever. Okay, so but it's just like the branches that people are working on right now, and the previous 2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, Chinese New Year, so people are actually away. So you'll see like the commit actually stopped, but I think this week people are coming back, so we will see like works continues on these branches. Yeah. And we're also working on the more official like design doc. So once the design is closed, we'll share them present in the community as well.
So, Riff, this is real interesting. So the DP app, the first link is this add-on miss and whatnot. Let's call it add-on. I'm not using the right terms, but it's this application that will ensure the flow tables are updated.
Yeah.
And replaces the need for stateful handling in BMv2 itself.
Yeah.
And then this Dash VPP, is that an implementation of Dash pipeline using VPP?
It is actually the data plan app, so implementing VPP because you already have some of the components that we could use, for example, BFDs and those things. So we just say, okay, let's just enable those things like to reduce implementation work. But and also so the VPP Dash right now is a separate repo, is just for doing experiments. And once it is more like I would say it is more ready or something, we'll move it to the Dash repo. So it will not be a forked repo. It will be all in Dash in one single repo. It should not be a separate repo. Yeah.
Okay, but just again, what is the VPP Dash do? What does it do?
So that is actually the code of the data plan app.
It's the code of the data plane app that's going to be used by that DP app.
Yeah.
Project.
So the DP app has created a sub module that imports the data VPP Dash.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're just different parts of the same project.
Yeah. Yes.
One's
yes.
a container.
I already asked the Junhua to actually merge those two into one because it actually creates a confusion why we need a separate repo. It can be all in the same place. Yes. Yes.
Well, so another question is this work you're doing, are you also, maybe you already said it, but is it also sort of pioneering this notion of bring your own data plane, so you'll have sort of a structure or a framework such that people who want to do their own data plane app, you'll kind of have a template for that, and then you can plug in your own specific code? Is that a goal of this or no?
Not really. But you said if people are interested in how to call those APIs, then they can find the reference from the data plan app.
Mm-hmm.
The bring your data plan app, I think that will be a very interesting topic, and we probably need to like discuss that separately, because that will definitely involved with like the the how to run the data plan app. That is for sure. But there is another perspective is that say if people want to also use part of the things that already exist in Dash. So the easiest part, of course, is the flow table. So we will just see how to actually create the flow with the flow APIs. However, if people need other things, say they want CAPM mapping or they want roads, so that will be slightly interesting to like how to integrate or how to extend. So yeah, so that means that the bring your data plan app can be it's better be tracked as a separate or independent thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like bring your own data plane app could have a nice project where you have sort of a kit for people.
Yeah, and also the we know the Sony community already have some of the solutions, so we don't want to like cause conflict and other things. So so that will be a separate topic. I think will be nice.
So Andy, given all this, you haven't said much, but what do you think about all this, given this full discussion?
So, I mean, I'll admit that this, getting DPDK working as another test vehicle is kind of just a hobby side thing for me now to keep me busy between jobs, and wasn't necessarily, targeted at what does Dash need the most right now. So, if it's not the thing Dash needs the most, that's why I wasn't trying to figure out what Dash needed the most necessarily. So, I can't think of anything more deep to say right now, other than it sounds like this bring your own data plane app sounds like a longer term, much more useful thing that might obviate the usefulness of DPDK.
I'm not quite sure of that last statement or not. It seems like
me too.
P4 DPDK is still a very worthy goal.
I'm happy to do the work and find out, if there are any further gaps there.
Because the purpose of the gap is actually to help bring close the gap whenever there is. So I think this one is actually on some degree is actually independent or independent from the topic of whether we are go with say DPDK or TC or the BMv2. So basically, then no matter which one we want to go, on the architecture wise, there will be some gaps, and that's where the data plane app can help to bring up the gap. It actually gives us more flexibility on the solution we choose. So
I do have a question for you, Riff.
Oh,
just my own understanding about the bring your own data plane. So now, just realize this question might be is definitely from a position of ignorance, and I may be out of date. A long time ago in Dash meetings, maybe even before you were involved, I recall there being sort of, one of the high level reasons for Dash was that, I think, sort of like Microsoft had network devices, maybe FPGA based, that could do high rate flow additions. They would punt the first packet of a flow off to some rack of general purpose CPU servers, and they would calculate it on something like this bring your own data plane app sounds like it might do, and then send a response back to the data plane devices that would install an entry in a flow table. And I thought one of the reasons for Dash being created was that was deemed like too expensive in terms of how many servers needed to handle those first packets of a flow.
Yeah.
Is this bring your own data plane idea coming back in the sense of, well, A, it's definitely more flexible, but B, maybe there's the ideas that maybe the IPUs or DPUs coming out have enough general purpose, ARM cores that approach is viable again?
I would say not really. But I don't know how much I can share publicly. But if you can call me like internally, I can definitely answer privately. I can answer any questions you like.
Okay, I understand if that can't be said publicly. I'm just curious about
yes.
the motivation.
Because for some of the use case, I would say is probably not really good to share because. Well, that's why that's one of the purpose to have the bring your own data plane app, because there are some things like, for example, on the patent, or you just like they could not be shared at this moment. But we still need to run it in prod.
Okay. I guess in a way, you're I mean that makes sense, and I'm not asking you to reveal private information. Is there? But I guess there's an expectation that Dash will still have, if you don't use the bring your own data plane feature, the Dash ACLs and all the stuff defined in the documentation now is still found useful. It's just the bring your own data plane is when that isn't exactly what you want, but you want something customized, then you can use the customized thing instead as an option.
Yeah, and yeah, so they're not conflicting, and also there is no plan say saying okay, whatever like putting dash, we actually implement that or move those things back to the data plan app. That's not the idea. Yeah, the idea is more like okay, there are some like things could not be disclosed, but we still need to run it. And so those things like we have to have a something that we could run.
Sure.
But also we also already have a dash. So
right. So
yeah, there are a lot of good things inside.
If dash products become reasonably widely deployed, then making them more flexible for custom applications is a useful thing.
Yeah, and also is it is a thing that the community can use. For example, the Alibaba Snack Gateway. So they can benefit from the dash flow table, and they can also like do like for example, if they want to use echoes, sure they can use echoes, but in the end there are some like I would say like the company dependent logic that they will need to run. And those things will come into the picture. So it's more like the just extends a little bit. But overall, I think how to model the whole pipeline, or how to extend the pipeline, or to wrap up the ASIC. I think those ones, or I should say, like bring your own data plan app. So those ones I think will be a longer discussion. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. That makes sense.
Yep, thank you.
Well, that was a long conversation today. So sounds like in the next 2 weeks we have work around the data plane app. I added Jimmy to the repo Riff, and I'm curious if Wei, do you have any questions? I know this is your first meeting. It's a lot.
Yeah, I'm still trying to learn it.
Well, you're a research scientist, so you're a lot smarter than I am.
No longer.
Nice to see you, Wei.
Yeah.
Very surprising to see you here.
Okay.
He's awesome. Yeah, so chime in if you have any thoughts around, where we're going with this. We're still under development, but at the end of the day, we would like to be able to, test and exercise the test cases in the pipeline. So, okay, sounds good, guys. So it sounds like we're still kind of under development. Would you agree?
It's
Yep.
That's the working part of working group.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to stop the recording because it is almost time to stop. And